All right, so as we begin in Illustrator, we are working with objects, and utilizing a certain tool is important to be able to move those objects around. So on Illustrator, the top tool in your toolbar over on the left is called your selection tool. It's also referred to as your black arrow. The black arrow is very different from the white arrow, as one is a selection tool and one is a direct selection tool. The way I like to think of this is the black arrow is for all of your general selection and movement. So when you're wanting to do anything where you're wanting to select an entire object and change it, you're going to use that black arrow or that selection tool. If you want to get into the details, if you want to get into the weeds and you want to go ahead and find the different points of an object or adjust things that are very, very minute on the object, that's when you're going to want to use the direct selection tool. We'll get to it in a little bit, but for now, we're going to focus on the selection tool to select entire objects and move them around. Everything on on this project is vectorized. They are vectorized objects. When I hover over them, you can see, so I'm going to go and zoom in. Remember, Alt Scroll is how you can zoom in, or you can use this magnifying glass over here. And actually, I'll show that real quick. With the magnifying glass, I can have it here. I can click to zoom in once, but you can actually click and drag to zoom in on wherever you were. So as you can see, I can zoom in on this hat and apples here by clicking and dragging inward, and wherever you were clicked originally is where it's going to focus that zoom on. And you can do the same thing to zoom out if you're not using Alt Scroll. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on these objects, and I'm going to grab my selection tool. You can see when you hover over an object that has already been vectorized, it's going to give what's called a path. And if you put your cursor over the blue line on the outside, the path, you're going to see that it shows the word path. But when you hover over certain areas of this, they're actually called anchors. And these are points that create the curves and the points of these. Like here, this corner is where you would have an anchor, this corner is where you would have an anchor, and so on and so forth. When you click on the apple, you'll see that it gives a bounding box around it, which allows you to transform it. For instance, I can put my cursor over like a corner and I can drag outward to begin transforming it. However, when you do this, keep in mind, it's allowing you to distort this apple. So I can make this apple like super wide, I can make it super tall, I could reflect it, all of those types of things. So you really want to make sure that when you're working with objects that you're either wanting to distort it or keeping it proportional. Another thing on your keyboard that's really important is undo. To be able to undo what you just did is a very beautiful thing, especially in design, but really in every program everywhere. So the keyboard shortcut to do that is Control. You hold the Control key and press the Z. And if you click it multiple times, it'll take you backwards. You can also go to Edit and click undo here, but you can see again the keyboard shortcut is listed right there, and I can click it multiple times to go back. This time when I resize the apple, I can click on the corner and I can hold Shift on my keyboard, and this works not only in the Adobe programs, but in Google presentations and docs, Word, all those kinds of things, to keep it proportional as I drag outward. So even if I drag, all the way over to the right over here, it's still keeping it proportional as I resize that apple. Okay. In addition, you also have the ability to do that from the top and the bottom as well. And then if you go to a corner and you go to the outside edge of that corner, your cursor will turn into a little curved line with arrows pointing, and you can rotate an object around. Okay, so that's just a little review on how it works with selecting an object. Let's talk about selecting and deselecting. When you click on an object, it selects it. When you click off of it on the artboard, the white area, or on the pasteboard, it deselects it so that you have nothing selected. If you want to select multiple objects, you can click one, and then if you click the other, it's going to deselect the original object and go to the new one. But you can hold Shift on your keyboard to select multiple objects. You can click off of them on the artboard to deselect them all. You can also hold Control on your keyboard, and that will let you pop between objects and see the different anchor points and paths of that object, essentially putting you into the direct selection tool while not leaving the selection tool. But Shift allows you to select multiple things together. You can also deselect something while holding Shift. So for instance, if I don't want the big apple or I don't want the hat, I can hold Shift and I can deselect the hat and just get these options back. Notice the bounding boxes around all of the objects I've selected, and I could resize these all at once if I wanted to. Another way to select things, I'm going to go ahead and deselect out here, is to click and drag a box around whatever you want to select. So you can see that when I click out here on the artboard and I begin to drag, I get this dotted line, and whatever my box contains when I let go of my click is what's going to get selected. So for that instance, I selected that apple, but now I'm going to go ahead and select it here with the both apples. If I want all 4 objects, I can select all 4. And then if I wanted to deselect this hat, I could just hold shift and deselect it. So you have a lot of options for selecting different objects. So when you're working with objects, keep that in mind. What we're going to do here is we're going to select all of these fence posts at once. So I've zoomed out, Alt scroll, and I'm going to click and drag a box from the pasteboard out here all the way across to select all of these fence posts. What we're then going to do is open up our alignment panel. So for the next video, your goal is to get that alignment panel open so that you can see the alignment tools.